Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Irish Stew, I guess, a now ongoing series of videos on this channel where I talk to you about a whole range of stuff, and not just books. I've done these videos before over the years. In 9,000 videos, there's pretty much no video I haven't done. But I've been, I admit, a little surprised at how many of you want me to keep doing these things. And some of the nice things that you have said as to the reason why. Of course, a lot of you, when you email, have said, keep in mind, I'm saying this nice thing, but please don't let it go to your head, because quite a few of you, even if you haven't met me in person, know that although I love compliments, I have a healthy ego already. Anyway, you don't want to make me any more insufferable than I already am. So we're going to do this, we're going to break this down the same way that we always do. We will look at the world, some story that is attracting my attention in the world, and then the United States of America, and then broader YouTube, and then BookTube, and finally me. And we will see what we can see. And I mentioned in a recent Irish Stew video, when it was talking about the world and the United States, I mentioned one of the most embarrassing things that has ever happened to me as an American. Donald Trump just lazily, slurredly grievance peddling in front of the United Nations General Assembly. Is the most, in addition to everything else that it was all false. It's astonishing. I know I've said this before. It's astonishing. Not one single sentence that he said in almost an hour of speaking was true. You would think by simple momentum of living in the ontologically verifiable world that you couldn't do that. But not one single sentence was true. Nothing that he said was true. Nothing. Not even that the UN screwed up when it stopped the escalator or stopped the teleprompter. Those things weren't, the UN wasn't involved. It wasn't the UN's fault for either one of those things. When the escalator stopped, he and his bot wife, Melania, had been on it for 1 second. So he says, lucky that the First Lady's in excellent shape, and so am I, or we could have been hurt. No chance he could have been hurt. It had barely been moving. And she's not in excellent shape, and he's not in excellent shape. Literally everything he said was a lie. All of it. That he stopped 40 wars between countries that haven't been at war that he can't name. Anyway, I mentioned that in an earlier Irish Stew video, that just a river of lies, just an unending river of lies. And for the world segment this time around, I want to mention that same UN General Assembly, only this time it was Benjamin Netanyahu that stood up to talk. And a large number of people walked out. There were cheers, but a large number of people walked out. And I thought that was interesting. I am watching to see whether or not the rest of the world is going to turn on Israel as a pariah state wholesale, as opposed to little gestures here and there. A few countries recognizing Palestinian statehood, for instance. A few countries in the region not wanting Palestinian refugees, closing their gates to them completely and not wanting to be coerced about it. I'm interested to see if there will come a tipping point when the whole world walks out on Israel, on the Netanyahu government. So seeing a little bellwether like that struck me as very interesting. There's frantic legislation, frantic MAGA campaigns in my country to forestall that, to stop that from happening. The obvious approach to a rogue nuclear state that is committing genocide is boycott, divestment, and sanctions. It is not war. It is not anything brutal. It is the whole world to turn their backs on this country until it stops what it's doing. That works. That is incredibly effective. Even if the United States didn't join that, which for some reason that I cannot figure, the United States will never join that. But even if the United States didn't join that, if the rest of the world did, it would have a seismic effect. It might save all the rest of the Palestinian lives. That is the clear goal. The clear goal of the Netanyahu government is to create a greater Israel in which there are no Palestinians. And if they won't immigrate, or if the gates are shut to them, well, there's another way there can be no Palestinians. But I found that moment fascinating to watch. It in some measure made up for watching Trump's speech. So that's the world. Is that a large number of people reacted to Benjamin Netanyahu's presence at that podium the way all of them should have reacted. He's the president of a country that is committing a genocide. He should not be welcome in the UN General Assembly. And also, I mean, in a law-abiding world, should have been arrested the minute he left the premises. The minute he walked outside to go to his car, he should have been arrested. But anyway, that's the world. And then we can talk about the U.S. There are two major stories in the U.S. right at the moment. They are one is political and one is far worse than political. The political one is that Donald Trump is starting to force his Justice Department to arrest his political enemies. He had his Justice Department issue indictments against former FBI head James Comey, and has broadly hinted that there are many, many more such indictments to come. I fully believe that. I don't think this is vulnerable to polling. Of course, this will poll bad, but I don't think that matters. I really think that people like Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama should not be laughing off this whole concept. They could easily be indicted. That's the political story. Of course, I've been watching it with interest, but it's been a double-edged interest because I'm no fan of James Comey at all. The only reason we're all living in this nightmare is because of him. Because he decided to grandstand in public out of a clear, obvious, visual hunger for the limelight. He decided to grandstand in public and throw the 2016 election to Donald Trump. I was infuriated with him when he did that. I've been infuriated with him ever since. But the indictment is obviously bogus. So, and as every commentator has said, it's an unbelievably ominous signal that you will now prosecute your political enemies. And the reason why it's being done, aside from the fact that Trump wants the history books to say, well, I had a fake impeachment, but so did, Joe Biden. I had fake lawfare conducted against me, so did my enemies. So I'm not any worse than they are. It's Donald Trump's lifelong pattern. He doesn't stand above. He pulls people down. He doesn't say, I'm not going to stand in the muck. He says, look, they're in the muck with me, so they're no better than I am. The reason, aside from that petty desire for revenge, the reason why it's being done when a few people have gone to Donald Trump and said, sir, this is a really, really bad idea. Not because they're not guilty. Anyone who doesn't like you is guilty, but because of the precedent that it sets. We will all be staggeringly vulnerable when the non-fascist party takes power, because you will have set this precedent. And the thing that I find most important about this, the reason why those warnings were ignored, is because there isn't going to be any future in which that would happen. This is exactly the kind of precedent-shattering move you make if you have no plans of leaving power. Same thing with almost everything else that the Trump regime has done. Everything that they're doing says that we plan on staying for 25 years until Barron Trump can take over. So that is political. And then the other story that is all over the news here in the U.S. It could be seen as political on one level, but I don't think it is. I think it's something much more serious than that. The Secretary of Defense, who is now insisting that we call him the Secretary of War for the peace president, Pete Hegseth. I'm not saying that he's remarkably poorly qualified. He has no qualifications at all. He's a TV hairdo, and he's in charge of the Pentagon. I'm going to call him Secretary of Defense. I don't care how many letters you pry off buildings. It's just ridiculous. You looking to virtue signal your T count to incels is not a good enough reason for me to change the nomenclature of your title. He has summoned all of the United States top generals and admirals to a meeting at Quantico early next week. And he's broadcast that fact. So China, for instance, North Korea, for instance, Russia, for instance, they now know exactly where all of the top generals and admirals and all of their support staff, they also were instructed to come and to kneel before Hegseth. All of them were, not just the generals and admirals, but their staff as well, their adjutants and lieutenants. They were all instructed to go to one place, and the whole world was told when and where. If I were China, with unlimited money, what on earth? Who on earth? This has never happened before. Who on earth signals that sort of thing? Even if it weren't a state-sponsored action, if I were China, I would pay 500 million yen, to some third party of a third party cutout to take out that building, take out Quantico on the day in question. Suddenly there's no military leadership in the United States. Well, then what can you do in the South China Sea? Straits of Hormuz or anywhere else? What? There's nothing you can't do if there's no military leadership. Anyway, quite apart from that, it doesn't even have to be China. It could be anybody. It could be all the friends of the felon of the Silk Road that Trump pardoned. It could be anybody. Anybody looking to decapitate the United States military capacity knows exactly when and how to do it. But on top of that, there's the reason why the thing that is not being broadcast, the location and the people are being broadcast. But the thing that's not being broadcast is why. Why Pete Hegseth, and keep in mind, he's a cat's-paw. Nothing in the Trump regime happens without Trump actually saying for it to happen. Nothing does. Because if it does, if someone goes off on their own hook, they'll find red-hatted MAGA supporters at the end of their driveway when they drive home, and they'll all have crowbars. So it's just the mob. The boss tells you what to do, all of it. He tells you all of what to do. So this is his idea, and why? What could the reasons be? The two foremost reasons that are being floated for this unprecedented meeting are, one, that the country is going to war. Probably with Venezuela, but who knows? And that doesn't seem likely to me because you wouldn't pull generals from non-contiguous areas. You would want the generals from the area, but not from everywhere. Unless you just don't care. Unless you just don't care about how vulnerable that leaves your country. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you're just so dumb that you don't care. That's one example that's been floated. The other example that's been floated that strikes me as far more likely is a kind of firm handshake, eyes, Andrew Tate loyalty test type thing. That Pete Hegseth is going to learn the true nature of these people and who's loyal to the most important principle of the United States military, which is not honor and service and duty, but a racist, sexist, fascist, lying, moron, rapist fraud from Queens. Just him. Just one guy. That one guy. You took an oath, but I don't care about that, and I have to know that you don't care. We're talking about one guy. That one guy. Are you loyal to him? And if you're not, leave your insignia because you're fired. I think it's a major house clearing. This is very, very common in fascist dictatorships. The army has to be unquestionably loyal to you. You have to take as many steps as you can to make sure that's true. So I guess we'll know. I guess we'll know. Unless Quantico is just reduced to rubble on Tuesday, I guess we'll know the result. It will leak, or people will come forward. Maybe at least one general or admiral will resign if they're asked to swear loyalty to Trump over the country. Maybe at least one of them will resign. I've heard a lot of people, a lot of commentators on YouTube saying that all of them will. Nonsense. The military is MAGA. Almost to a person, they are MAGA. So law enforcement, state and local law enforcement, all MAGA. So if you say that a four-star general is going to resign if he's told to swear loyalty to Trump instead of the country, then show me examples of any generals that have done that. I don't think you can. I'll be interested to see what comes of it. Who knows? It seems like, to me, like a manifestly crazy thing to do. To bring all your military commanders into one tent and tell the whole world you're doing that. That seems just manifestly crazy. And of course, the craziest conspiracy theory explanation for that I have heard is that Stephen Miller wants to present a tempting target. A target that's so tempting that someone won't be able to resist, that he wants that. I don't know how that breaks down. We will see. I will keep an eye on it. And, of course, if these Irish Stew videos continue, I will update you. So that you don't have to look at this garbage yourself. Just such a... I know the word embarrassment keeps coming up. It is just so embarrassing that this guy is head of the Pentagon. But anyway, that brings us to YouTube, and we can deal with far more pleasant subjects, like giant killer sharks. There's a YouTube channel called Sharks Happen, and although I'm pretty sure that the guy who hosts Sharks Happen is Trump cult, he never brings it into his videos, so I don't care. He talks about shark attacks instead. And he talks about a recent shark attack from a shark that eyewitnesses put at 23 feet. Which is absolutely enormous. That is a gigantic great white shark. And an attack that happened, I believe, off the Farallon Islands, that I mentioned just the other day, as being the last place on Earth that you would want to go scuba diving or game fishing would be there. If it wasn't the Farallon Islands, it's still a dumb idea to dive into the ocean and swim down into shark territory and spear their food. That's still an inherently dumb idea. But Sharks Happen is a fun channel. You might want to subscribe to it if you like shark attack videos. So that is YouTube. And then we can move on to BookTube. For instance, to Ramble, a team-up YouTube channel that I really, really like, and obviously huge numbers of people do. I think they're up to criminale levels of subscribers. They read a lot of stuff, but I think their heart lies in FantasyTube. And they did a discussion video on the merits of so-called grimdark fantasy. A nice long, they do long videos. They're really worth listening to. They go into every aspect of whatever subject they cover. And they talked about grimdark fantasy, which is a particular kind of fantasy that's enormously popular, where there are no heroes, there is nothing upstanding, there is nothing of value, there are no ethics, there are no morals, and there's lots and lots of extremely graphic decapitations, disembowelments, cutting off fingers, cutting off toes, cutting out tongues, stabbing out eyes. And the two hosts of To Ramble weigh all of that stuff. The good, the bad, good examples of it, popular authors who do it, Joe Abercrombie being, of course, the poster boy for grimdark and whatnot. And I found it fascinating. It did not convince me. Maybe it will convince you. I went into it open. I was willing to let it convince me. It didn't convince me to move even an inch away from my position going in, which is that grimdark as a subdivision of fantasy is worthless. It is an expression of the easy, cheap, and ultimately dumb nihilism that is the defining characteristic of the 21st century. Just in book form. So they didn't convince me. They didn't add any nuances to that opinion. I've read a lot of grimdark fantasy, and it is worthless. But they might interest you. They might convince you to change or show you some things. And then two other things on BookTube were a little bit connected. Michael K. Vaughan did a video where he talks about... I don't know that he ever uses the word burnout. But he's talking about his channel in the new year, in 2026, and mentions a couple of times that maybe he'll cut back on BookTube events. That maybe they're getting a little thin, maybe they're getting in the way of some things that he much more organically wants to do. And then today, Kevin Towle Reads did a rambling video where he mentioned a couple of times that maybe I won't even upload this. One of those kind of videos where you don't really know the full shape of your thoughts until you get on camera. It's a totally legitimate kind of video to make, where you work it out on camera. And he did upload it, and it also deals with burnout. With BookTube burnout. Too many events, thinking too much about videos, that it's drawing me away from actually reading. And that made me wonder. Watching those two, I'll leave links to all of these things, but watching those things made me wonder about BookTube burnout. I noticed that this is a cyclical discussion. BookTube burnout comes up as a topic regularly on BookTube, and I've noticed that it tends to come up after summer. It tends to come up when people are funneling, in the Northern Hemisphere, funneling into autumn. When commitments are growing greater, workloads are growing steadier, the day is growing shorter, and I wonder if that has an effect on this. I wonder if that's partly why. But those of you who make BookTube videos, are you feeling burnout? Those of you who only watch BookTube videos and leave comments, are you noticing people talking about burnout? I find that fascinating. I think the subject is very interesting. So I'll leave links to those. That was BookTube, and then we can come on to me. We'll go out on a bang. We'll finish with the best subject, which is me. And I have two subjects. One is tech related. I'm trying to figure out how much it will affect me. My impression is that it won't affect me much. I don't know if you've seen this in the news, but Amazon has announced that they are going to be, in their new firmware update, they're going to be even more strictly restricting whether or not you can read non-DRM, digital rights management coded stuff on their devices, in their ecosystem. They really, really don't want you to be able to do that. They don't want you to be able to, for instance, buy a book from Amazon and then strip the DRM off it. They don't want you to be able to do that. They don't want you to do that not only because it means you can move the thing between devices, including devices that aren't Amazon devices, but also it would mean that you could give the device, you could give the file to somebody else. And they don't want you to do that. And they've come up with a new way. I'm not all that tech savvy, so I don't know how effective it is. A new way to restrict that even further. My first impression of this is that it isn't going to affect me at all, since I have two kinds of content on my Kindle. The comments field to a whole bunch of sites that were writing about this, everyone in the comments field was saying, well, it's an easy problem to solve. Just go to Kobo. Don't deal with Amazon anymore. But I have a Kindle, and the two types of content that I have on my Kindle, one is watermark stuff, DRM stuff, like the stuff I get on Kindle Unlimited, the stuff I get from those ebook deal sites, daily deal sites, and also PDF copies from publishers. And in all three of those cases, I couldn't care less what Amazon does with it. I'm never going to give it to anybody else. I'm never going to send it to anybody else. And I don't really care if it lives or dies on the device. The Kindle Unlimited stuff and the daily ebook deal stuff are whims. If Amazon tells me you need to stand on your head and spit nickels in order to do this, I'll say, well, they're just whims. I don't need them anymore, thanks. I won't. And the PDFs from publishers are extreme advanced copies of things that I'm going to get in print copy anyway. So that's one type. And for that type, I don't really care. I don't think a change, a restriction on DRM would affect me at all. And the other type of stuff, the huge bulk of stuff that I have on my Kindle, is side-loaded copy. And I don't think this firmware update is going to change that. I think the next firmware update will. Amazon is clearly moving towards a place where you can't sideload anything that doesn't have Amazon-approved DRM coding on it. So you can't read sideloaded documents unless they go through some sort of system that I don't know yet because it hasn't been invented yet. Amazon is clearly moving towards that, where they exclusively supply, control, and own everything on your Kindle. Now, I can't help but think that if they get much closer to that goal, they're going to see a mass exodus to Kobo and other things. That could easily... Your competitor is sitting right out there in the open. You get too restrictive, you're going to send millions of people in that direction. I don't know if this will do it. I think this thing is start flying largely under the radar. But if Amazon were to make their devices... You can't sideload anything anymore, I think a lot of people would just walk. And I wonder if you would. I certainly would. Without hesitation, I would. I need an e-reader that works for me. I don't work for Amazon. But I'm wondering what you think. But anyway, that's one of the me elements that at least tangentially deals with books. The other one doesn't deal with books at all. And that is a furtherance of the me portion from yesterday's Irish Stew video where I talked about cooking. I asked a question. I have this kind of a goulash type thing. It was pre-cooked, microwavy goulash type thing. I have a bunch of boxes of that. And I asked a question yesterday, can I cook those on an open stove? And I got a whole bunch of responses in email and in comment section, and very reassuringly, they contradicted each other. Just what I want. Some people said, no, you absolutely cannot. You'll ruin it, or it'll be dangerous to eat. Other people said, sure you can. Absolutely. Defrost it, take it out of the freezer, and put it in the refrigerator overnight. And then once it's all the way through defrosted, just cook it very carefully and attentively on the stove, and you'll be fine. But in addition to that contradictory advice, a lot of people were saying, well, just pop it in the microwave. It's a microwave-type dish. It's got microwave instructions right on it. Just pop it in the microwave. And I don't have a microwave oven. So the me portion of this, which none of you are watching, because no one watches past the first 60 seconds, is, should I get a microwave oven? Are they a lifesaver? I imagine for a lot of you they are a lifesaver. You can't imagine a kitchen without a microwave oven. Should I get one? Would I get a lot of use out of it? I'm very curious. Very curious to know. With a few months left before I disappear in 2025, should I add something to the kitchen? I wouldn't add it, of course. I wouldn't. But should I have a microwave oven added to the kitchen? Would I get a lot of use out of it? I mean, it seems a little silly to get a new piece of technology for the counter space in the kitchen merely in order to cook those 4 items in the freezer. But would I get more of those items? Is, I guess, my question. How much variety is there in a microwave oven? But anyway, that's me cooking. Because I am doing a soft launch of a cooking channel. Anyway, that's your Irish Stew video for today. I'll wrap this up, but I'll be back, and we'll touch base with all of this tomorrow. Thank you, BookTube.